I bullied my best friend into unaliving himself just so I could fit in with the popular kids. My friend Luke was one of the most caring, funny, and loving friends anybody could ask for. When I met him for the first time, we immediately clicked. We were more on the nerdy side, and both loved Lord of the Rings. I became friends with him pretty easily. Really close friends. We went on adventures around our town with wooden sticks we found in the forest, had duels, and invited other people to do a sort of pseudo-LARPing. Luke was even getting more proficient with the popular kids, as he was really good at video games, and video games were really cool. He was straight on the Yu-Gi-Oh trend that spouted up, so all in all, for an unpopular kid, he was quite popular, at least during middle school. Luke was a tad overweight. But the one thing that stood out to me was that he never cried when he was bullied about his weight or being awkward. He'd just take it. And if he ever got into any physical confrontations, he'd win. I was never sure if he was autistic or on any sort of spectrum. But as I got older, I began to learn what was really going on in that head of his. I'll never forget the day I went to his house. It was in an okay area, I suppose, lower middle class. But he lived in absolute squalor. His mother could not work and was practically disabled. And his dad spent his days riding the bus, chewing tobacco, and begging on the streets. Being so young, I just thought his parents were messy. I didn't even realize that they were in some serious hard times. In high school, things started to change. A new swathe of people preying on Luke was not a good thing for him. He was instantly cast out as a loser, and a reject. His relatively good social life in primary school was gone. I on the other hand got quite a good rep. I was considered quite intelligent and socially competent. I tried to work my way into the only thing I cared about then, girls. My relentless quest for getting played brought me further and further away from Luke, until my worst nightmare came true. I became his bully. It all started in art class. It was discovered by the whole class that if we held a sharp object toward him, he'd let out a really funny sounding scream of terror. Again, I was young. I didn't really understand that this was linked to a whole lot of underlying trauma. So the next 2 years were spent pretty much offhandedly tormenting him. It makes me feel sick. This poor kid, that used to be my friend. College started a few years later, and situations with his social life hadn't improved much. Although he had established himself with the nerdy kids, not much had changed. He was still bullied. He wore the same tweed suit every day that he bought from charity shops, and just walked around with his head to the floor. Near the end of my last year in college, I ran into him. I let out a small greeting. "Hey Luke," I said, totally aware of all the things I'd done at that point. He recoiled in terror, eyes wide open when he saw me. I'll never forget that look. It's like I was a train racing toward his face. I asked him how he was. He then told me his mom had tried unaliving herself and died in hospital a few months ago. Again, Luke didn't cry or tear up. I did. I did big time. I went to give him a hug, but again he recoiled away and backed off like I was going to stab him. He said, "I never want to see you again. You betrayed me. You have changed me." After college, I only saw him walking to and from college as I went from my house to my work. Wearing the same tweed suit. Every time I went into town I would see his dad begging for some change. It would break my heart. A few months later, I found out he got into the university he wanted to get into. He made his way into Cambridge University on full scholarship. It was a highly prestigious school, especially for someone like him that had parents going as far as begging on the streets. 2 months after I found that news, I discovered that Luke jumped off a bridge into high-speed traffic. I can't live with myself knowing that I ruined the life of my best friend. He did nothing but bring me joy and friendship, and in return, I made him unalive himself. 3 years have passed since that incident. I sometimes lay awake at night and just sob. He was such a good kid. He wouldn't hurt a soul, even though he had enough strength and enough reason to. If there is an afterlife, I hope he's able to live a better life up there than he had down here.